Welcome to another episode of Elevate from Burnout to Bliss, where we help you create freedom, balance, and wealth with purpose. I'm certified financial planner Reginald Clark.
And I'm Ebony Clark, and today we're diving into one of the most important and most avoided conversations families can have: estate planning.
That's right. This is the talk that changes everything. It's about protecting what you've built, honoring your parents' wishes, and making sure your family doesn't end up tangled in courts or confusion.
We'll break down what probate really is, how to keep the family home out of it, and the difference between a will and a trust. We'll even talk about how trusts are taxed and what families need to know about Medicaid, Medicare, and long-term care.
If you've ever said, man, I'll get to that later, this episode is for you because later is often too late. And preparation is the greatest gift you can give your loved ones.
So stay tuned. We're about to have the talk that changes everything right here on Elevate from Burnout to Bliss.
All right, guys, we're back at it once again. So glad to be back with you guys for the next few minutes.
Hey, everybody.
This is Season 2, Episode 11. And today, the title of this particular episode, guys, is The Talk That Changes Everything. We're talking about estate planning for you, not just you. We're going to include your parents, too. Mm-hmm. Because if you're like me, we kind of, been around long enough. I can remember real quick. Okay. When I first got into financial planning, I remember them talking about the sandwich generation. These were people who were sandwiched in between, planning and starting to have to do things for parents as well as children. I remember me thinking, wow, that's a long way off.
Yeah, well, it came quick, didn't it?
It came quick. So anyway, this is the talk that changes everything. And what we thought this episode, we know, as a matter of fact, this is going to be very, very key for a lot of people because it's a lot of people dealing with this. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, especially those people that's in that middle career space, the ones we cater to. Right. You are having to, do some decision making and considerations for your parents, and you may still be taking care of kids. So we're talking about, again, estate planning, because we know this is can be a confusing subject for a lot of people. We want to peel it back, make it simple. Mm-hmm. And again, as we always do, give you some action items that you can put into place immediately. One thing I want to talk about real quick, Ebony, is why people just can't wait to have the talk. You can't wait.
No, you can't wait.
Let me say this real quick. Most families, and and another reason why I think this is so good, too, that we're doing this now, families are about to get together here just, in a couple of weeks.
Right.
It may be a great time to introduce some of these ideas.
And you never want to miss an opportunity.
Yeah, you bet not.
If you're with your family, that is a good time to talk about it.
That's a good time to talk about it.
It doesn't matter the occasion.
Because families talk about everything. Where we vacationing next year, the careers, the college plans. Mm-hmm. But one conversation people not always, a lot of people tend to avoid, though, is what's going to happen when so-and-so passes away.
Right.
And, really speaking I'm going to just kind of speak for my community here for a second. Talking about death is really taboo.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I can remember people saying things, I don't want to talk about this, something's going to happen to me. Well, one thing I share in almost every seminar that I do when we're talking about this topic is I say, what's the chances of me dying?
100%.
It's 100%. The only thing I don't know is when. So because I know this is something that's going to happen, go ahead and have the conversations now.
And then once you have it, it's out of the way.
Yeah, it's not like you got to have this conversation every time y'all get together.
Right.
But anyway, Eb, so why do you think so many families avoid having this conversation?
To your point, especially in our community, it's emotional.
It's very emotional.
It's hard. If you're having a good day, you're enjoying yourself with your family, most people don't want to take a break and talk about something like death and what happens to their what they own after death.
Right.
But we're talking about planning. The planning is the purpose, not the death is the purpose.
Correct.
It's just the planning happens to prepare for the death. And it's more a conversation about love because you want to make sure that your family is set up properly and that there's not going to be a lot of chaos and arguing and back and forth with the court system once you're gone.
That's right. I'm gonna that's very good that you threw that in there. I want to say something too. If you don't care about anything that happens after you're gone, then this episode ain't for you. Right. Very simple. Only people that need to be concerned about estate planning are those who care about someone or some entity after they're gone. If that's not a concern of yours, then hey, don't do it.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
But for the rest of us that do care, one of the things I want to add, Ebony, is that people actually talk about estate planning all the time. They just don't know it's estate planning.
Okay.
Because if you're trying to figure out what to do, with Big Mama's house after she passes, or if you're talking about whether or not Dad had a life insurance policy, or do we have to pay off these debts, or are you talking about, are we going to put Uncle Junior in a home?
Right.
And if so, who's going to pay for it? All of these things, those are estate planning topics. But typically, we just didn't know they were estate planning.
And we're talking about them too late.
That's right. Usually once we have those conversations, it's after these things have happened.
So what happens when families don't plan?
When families don't plan, it's the same thing as fishermen when they don't fish. They fight. All right?
Okay.
When fishermen don't fish, they fight, man. So it's the same thing. When families don't plan, well, and the fighting is probably, one of the, I guess, worst cases that happens. But even if there's no fighting, there's a lot of chaos. A lot of chaos when families don't plan. It creates confusion, legal battles, unnecessary taxes. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Without a clear plan, here's the thing. You're the one that worked hard for whatever assets you have. And that's another thing we're going to do. I want to peel the cover back. Please listen to me. If anyone thinks estate planning is something that only the wealthy do, perish the thought, because it's not true. If you have anything to leave behind and you care about what happens to it, do some estate planning to make sure it goes where you want it to go. And we're going to talk about the one goal, the main goal, in just a second. But anyway, if you don't do it, the state gets to decide these things.
Right.
The state who had nothing to do with the accumulation of this.
And the state that doesn't know you.
They don't know you. They don't know your people. They don't care about you. They don't care about your people. They don't care about what you cared about. Right? So why let them decide what happens to your stuff?
Exactly. And I will say, in our community, we have untraditional family structures, probably more so than other communities. And so you want to make sure that those things are accounted for, those relationships are accounted for. So I wanted to go over a few stats concerning planning, because we were talking about the lack of planning. So as of 24-25, between 24% and 32% of U.S. adults have a will. So that's very low. That's less than a third. And one study found that the number of Americans with a will decreased from 40% in 2016 to 24% in 2025. So it's going the other way. And when the people that did this survey, 43% of the people that responded that did not have a will, you want to know their reason?
What was that?
They just hadn't gotten around to it. Just hadn't gotten around to it.
As though they know what day they are. Y'all, we all got an appointment that we're going to keep. You may be late. You may be missing some appointments, but there's one we are all going to keep. None of us make it out of here alive, right?
Correct.
So, again, not trying to be morbid here on this day, but we're just trying to bring it to you so that you can understand why the importance of it. Right? Along that same point, I want to share real quickly some celebrities. And, we hear in the news, celebrities who pass. And these articles and things typically talk about without a will. But we're going to point out really quickly here, a will is just one very small part of estate planning, okay? It's not the end-all, be-all. All right? Prince died without a will, left over $300 million estate for the courts to figure out how this is going to be distributed.
Wow.
Crazy. Aretha Franklin died without a will. Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley, Howard Hughes, Sonny Bono, Tupac, Larry King. I mean, people who you would just expect or you would just assume got these things together.
Right.
But again, having a lot of money don't make you prudent, just like not having a lot of money don't mean that you shouldn't be. You know what I'm saying? So we all got to take care of this business. And today our goal is to make it very, very simple. Some things, again, you can do as soon as this podcast ends, and some things that you will need to reach out to an attorney for. But again, these things you need to do. All right.
A couple of other things that I read that were interesting to me. One, the older you get, the more likely you are to have some type of estate planning. So for people who were ages 18 to 34, only about 24% of those adults had a will or some type of estate planning. Once someone reached 55 plus, it was 45%. And once they reached 72 plus, it was 81%. So it seems like the closer people mentally get to what they think is going to be the end of their life, the more they're concerned about it.
You start to see that, reality starts to set in. But here's the thing. Again, if you're in our target audience, 40s, 50s, 60s, 30s, wherever you are, you still need to do some planning.
You definitely do.
Right now. And matter of fact, I'm going to share a story. Then I'm going to go over some signs that you need to do some planning.
One more, because it tied to an episode we did previously when we were talking about wealth, the wealth disparity. Mm-hmm. So the disparities exist between races as well. Mm. So people that, like people of color, are less likely to have an estate plan due to wealth gaps and lack of access to financial literacy resources. Mm. And while white adults still lead in ownership, the percentage among blacks has seen a notable increase in the past couple of years. So that ties right into the episode we did a few weeks ago.
It definitely does. And, once you get the information, all excuses go away, right? So there's no more, hey, I didn't know. They didn't teach this in school. Well, guess what? We're teaching it right now, so act accordingly. But anyway, let me share a story with you. A friend of mine, good friend of mine. This met some years ago. He and his wife were estranged, and unfortunately, he had a heart attack. And I remember speaking with him prior to this happening, and he was telling me that he needed to get some things together. He needed to meet with me to, update beneficiaries, to just to do a lot of different things with retirement account, life insurance, blah, 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 blah. And, we were having that conversation. Next thing I know, he's in the hospital. And even when I went to visit him in the hospital, he brought the conversation back up again. And I said, hey, man, as soon as you get out here, we're going to knock this stuff out. Blah, 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 blah. Well, fast forward the clock, he took a turn for the worse, and the thing about it was he had another episode in the hospital, but at the time, the only person that had the legal power, legal authority to pull the plug was the estranged wife. Mm. And she did just that.
Man.
And they were not on good terms, and she did that, and that's where all the assets went.
Wow.
So with just a little planning, I'm sure things would have gone a little differently. So again, you have to take care of this business, man, because you just can't put it off.
And estate planning, to Reggie's point, estate planning is not just for assets or things that you own. It can also be for health and medical directives.
Exactly. We're going to talk about that. Absolutely right. So here's some signs that you need an estate plan, right? Okay. You may say, okay, does this even apply to me? Let's start with the easiest one. Do you have any kids? If you do, yeah, you need an estate plan, especially if you have minor kids. You got to make some decisions like, okay, something happens to me, something happens to, if you and the other parent together, something happens to both of us. Who continues to raise our child, our children? Right. Right. Who's going to do the things we want done? Where's the money going to come from to raise them? Is the person that has control of the money, is that the same person that's the custodial for the kids? Probably shouldn't be, but anyway, how do you set all these things up? If something happens to the person that's going to raise the kids because you're gone,
then what happens?
Yeah, then you got to think about all this, y'all. Life is real out here. All right, so if you have kids, yes, estate planning is for you. Do you have specific wishes for your assets? Is there? I remember my great uncle. I'll never forget this, man. I remember him telling me, he said, Reggie, when I'm gone, I do not want my land sold. I remember that. He told me that. My wife heard him say it. We
sure did.
We heard him say it plenty of times. He had a lot of land back where I'm from. And, man, I guarantee you it wasn't 12 months. All his land was sold. So his wishes were not followed. Do you want someone to make decisions if you're incapacitated medically? Then you need estate planning. Do you want to avoid family conflict? If so, you better do some estate planning.
You better.
Do you have now, Eb, you brought this up. Do you have a complex family situation? It may be a blended family. You want to, especially, let me speak on that for a second. You got a blended family. I would suggest, and this will be something that you do under the guidance of a financial advisor, your state attorney, whoever it may be, but plan it in such a way. I'm not going to give you specifics, but what I would say is plan it in such a way where it allows everyone to grieve without anyone having to worry about is somebody getting more than me? Have I been left out? Or do I need to take care of this person, that person? You know what? While you're here, do the work, do the planning that will allow everybody else to move on, remember you in a positive way, and everybody can go through their own grieving process.
And even, I will add, even those with the best intentions. Like if there's a family structure, a complex family structure, blended family structure, and there's no contentions, everyone is getting along, you still cannot fully know the deceased person's intentions.
That's right.
Because you're not them.
Right. Only they know it.
Only they know it. Only they know it. So you can try your hardest, but still may not be fulfilling their wishes. So the easiest thing is to let them dictate what their wishes are. And it's on paper, and you can just move on.
That's exactly right. You know, with estate planning, you could also, I tell people all the time, it gives you some control beyond the grave with the proper planning, because you can plan for future expenses, like sending the kids to college, or maybe paying for a wedding down the road, or maybe down payment on a home. You can do all these things that you would have done had you still been here. You can plan for it with the proper planning. And I'm going to tell you something, having gone through the estate planning process and having, encouraged others to go through it, for me, it's very liberating. Because, just knowing you got that stuff squared away, really, for me, that's just me now, it helps me sleep better at night, knowing that if my number comes up, these are things that are already squared away. They're done. That's not something I have to worry about. And
the hardest part was getting started.
It really was.
That was the hardest part. Once you get past the hurdle of getting started, the rest of it
just falls into place.
It does.
Yep. One more thing. Let's say you got a family business or you got some investments. You definitely want to do some estate planning, because that adds another layer of complexity that needs to be squared away. So, believe it or not, this first segment has already gone by. 2 things that I want you all to get. If you're taking notes, start now taking notes. If you didn't from the beginning. 2 things I want you to get. 1, more than likely, you need an estate plan. 2, a will by itself is not going to be enough. We're going to talk about that some more when we get back right after these messages. Remember, guys, stay with us. It's time to elevate.
The information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. The views and opinions expressed by the host and their guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of P3 Financial Group, P3 Wealth Management, or any affiliated organizations. Listeners are encouraged to consult with their own qualified financial, legal, or tax professionals before making any decisions based on the content of this podcast. Neither the host nor their affiliates assume any responsibility or liability for any actions taken based on the information provided.
This episode of the Elevate Podcast is brought to you by P3 Wealth Management, a registered investment advisory firm registered in the state of Tennessee. Whether you're investing, preparing for retirement, or creating a lasting legacy, our team is here to guide you every step of the way. At P3 Wealth Management, we turn your financial goals into a strategy, so you can focus on living the life you worked hard for. Visit p3wealth.com to schedule your consultation today, or call us at 901-209-4015. That's p3wealth.com. Plan, protect, and prosper.
And we are back. So we're back again, guys. As we mentioned before, this is the episode of Burnout to Bliss, the Elevate Podcast. Today we're talking about the talk that changes everything. We're talking about estate planning, not only for you, but you and your parents. So, Ebony, we left off talking about, one of the last things we talked about in the previous segment was that, a will, that what we mentioned was that a will does not avoid probate.
Correct.
A will does not avoid probate. But I think we need to define exactly what probate is so people will know why they want to avoid it. So, right. Ebony, what's probate?
So probate is the process, it's a court process of actually verifying what's in the will. Okay. And how to distribute the assets, the things that the deceased person owned. Okay. So it is presided over by a judge, and that person, along with the will and their interpretation, decides where all of these assets go. But if there is no will, it is also the default setting. So if there's no will, then you automatically go to probate. And
I'm glad you said that. That's the part I was waiting to hear too. So if you only have a will or you don't have a will at all, then your stuff is going to probate.
Right.
And so for everybody listening, guys, what that means is simply it's going to the courts to be hashed out there, which opens you up to not you because you're gone, but opens, well, it may be you if it was someone that was leaving things to you. So you could end up in probate, or your stuff could end up in probate.
And because a will is something that's done at a specific point in time. So at the point that it's completed, it's valid and accurate and correct.
Right.
Life changes, and it's not something that gets updated very often, usually. So even when there is a will and the instructions were clear in the will, there may be family situations that make that will invalid, and then the courts still have to decide how to proceed. For example, there may be the birth of another child. There may be the death of someone that was included in the will. So you're leaving it up to the judge for their interpretation.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So, again, one of the main goals, part of the primary goal of estate planning is to avoid probate. Because like Ebony mentioned, it can be expensive, time-consuming, and I don't know if we mentioned this, it puts all your business in the public domain. So it's not private at all. And we're going to talk about what you can do to keep those things private, but that ain't it. It opens up, and it actually opens up the window for potential conflict amongst family members. Because, again, now we're talking about interpretation.
Right.
And here's a big one. It invites creditors and the government to come get a piece of the pie. So if you want to avoid all of that, if you want to avoid creditors, you want to avoid the government, you want to avoid all these different people getting involved in these assets. And, it might be, we talk about assets, y'all. We talk something as simple as a house, a car, personal property, whatever the case may be. If you don't want anybody else involved in that, then remember, the will is just one part of it. But you may also need to have as running mate a trust. So, what, you about to say something else?
I just want to make sure that the listeners are getting it, and just to be sure, because a lot of people think having a will means that they're protected.
Right, exactly.
Is that the case? No.
That's exactly the point. So remember, guys, a will does not avoid probate; it actually triggers it. Okay, so you don't. So a will is a piece, but it's not the only piece you need. You also going to need a trust. Okay. You're going to need a trust, and this is just me. You don't have to have an attorney to set it up, but I strongly advise that you do that under the counsel of an estate attorney. And I want to say something about that real quick. Not every attorney is an estate attorney. Now, can an attorney draft? Yeah, they could draft the legal documents, but that doesn't mean that's what they do all day, every day.
Right.
They don't if an attorney don't specialize in that, then I personally, would be leery of using them for these particular services.
Right.
It's just like I'm not going to a podiatrist for my heart. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to seek out a cardiologist because that's what they specialize in.
So let's talk about the difference between a will and a trust.
Okay.
So a will is a set of instructions to the court.
Right.
It's instructions telling the court what to do. But a trust is a private agreement that owns and distributes your assets. So when you set up a trust, without the court. So once you set up a trust, that trust owns the assets and determines how it's going to be distributed.
Exactly. The court has absolutely nothing to do with that. And
you can avoid probate entirely by using a trust and keep your private matters private, and it can speed up the process.
Absolutely. So again, not to just, sit here and just repeat each other, but just like she just said, when you're setting up a trust, and I want to say this, I've heard people say a trust. Y'all, there are many different types of trust.
So many different types of trust.
Okay? So again, to make sure you get the one that you need, you can't get the one that your friend got, because that's may or may not have been what your friend needed. To get the one you need, guys, seek out an estate attorney to know what they're talking about. All right? I hear people just spout, and most of the time I just sit there because I'm not the kind that's going to, just jump down a person's throat. But I just be like, man, that's just dead wrong. But anyway, get an attorney, find the right type of trust for your needs. But here's the main thing, what Ebony said, the trust owns the assets, or they will own the assets upon your death if it's revocable living trust. But whatever one you need, the trust will own the asset, and then it will distribute the assets, okay? So it won't be no ambiguity there.
And so I know there's some planning that we can do beforehand, before contacting an attorney. Can you tell the listeners some of those things? Yeah,
there's things you can do and should do that don't even require an attorney. That if you just did these, that'll at least get the ball moving. You could do things like create a detailed inventory of all of your assets. Just write down, this is where the bank accounts are, these are the account numbers, There's my retirement plans, my life insurance, my property. Here are my deeds, my valuables. Just writing all that, just cataloging all that, writing that down is a huge step forward. That's a big leap forward. You may do things like create a list of all your debts, all your obligations. This is, these are the mortgages. This are account numbers, loans. These are the credit cards. Just again, writing all these things down and login credentials, writing that down, keeping up with key contacts, all these things, just by cataloging all this stuff, writing it down, this is a big step towards ultimately getting your estate affairs in order.
And with a lot of accounts, brokerage accounts, bank accounts, life insurance policies, they will ask you for a beneficiary. So if you put down a beneficiary, does it still need to go through probate, or does that go around it?
Two things. One, it would not go through probate. Okay. But I want to correct something you said. A lot of times bank accounts will not ask you for the beneficiary. True. You got to tell them, listen, y'all, listen right here. If you have a bank account, if you listen to this Sunday, if we live, we listen to this right now, it's Sunday, we on Power 104. But anyway, Monday, here's what I want you to do. Tell your bank, I'll need to put a POD on my bank, payable on death. And it's just simply naming who the beneficiary of this account will be. All right? That person will be able to walk into the bank upon your death, present a death certificate, and get the money. It will not go through probate. All right? It does not give them access to the account while you're alive. It simply keeps that particular account from having to go through the court in order to go to whoever you want it to go to. All right? If it's an investment account, you need to get a TOD, transfer on death. All right?
Okay.
Before we move on, a couple things I want to say, too, about life insurance. If you have, and you should have a beneficiary on your life insurance, obviously, always name before we get down to contingent, I don't advise that you list a minor as a beneficiary on a life insurance policy. Maybe you could be a single parent, whatever the case may be. You say, okay, if I die, I want this to go to little Susie. Little Susie's 3 years old. I wouldn't advise naming little Susie as a beneficiary, because what's going to happen, that money is going to get put up by the state, getting less than 1% interest between now and when little Susie becomes majority age. And even then, she may have a hard time taking control of the assets. I've seen it. Courts fight to keep the money from those beneficiaries. Again, little planning, maybe it goes into a trust. The trust has on record the instructions on record how to take care of little Susie, all right? But if it's a minor, do not name that minor as a beneficiary on their life insurance policy. And
in cases like that, the person who is taking care of little Susie probably needs access to the money that you left to take care of little Susie.
Right.
And sometimes the courts will not allow that.
That's exactly right. So, again, revisit your beneficiaries on your life insurance policies. Always name a contingent and avoid putting minors on there. That's my advice.
And I'll give you a personal story about the contingent. Unfortunately, back in 2020, I lost my aunt and uncle to COVID, and they did not have children, and they were each other's beneficiary, but they... And one thing I want to add real quick, she lost them simultaneously. Simultaneously. They died at the same time. They died at the same time of COVID, and they were married. And they were each other's beneficiary, but they did not list the contingent. Right. So that just complicated their estate matters. It did. Because, again, they weren't married, each other's beneficiaries. I mean, they were married, no kids. No kids. So there was no clear... Heir. Yeah, that was sad. And stressful. Also, again, on your retirement accounts, pension plans, make sure you have beneficiaries and the contingent. Okay. Another thing you can do is draft a letter of instructions. So it's a non-legal document and it's informal, but you can list where your important documents are kept. You can give your funeral and burial preferences. It can also contain passwords, safe deposit info, contact lists, and you can even leave personal notes to your family. That's real good right there. I like that. So let's switch it up a little bit. I want to talk about real estate. Okay. Because people have asked me, so is there such thing as a TOD on real estate? My mom has a house. It's the house I grew up in. It's paid for. What happens if mom passes? What's the whole deal with the house, right? And, of course, this is something a lot of people, and there's a movement now. I see it a lot in social media, and I applaud it, that we're trying to get people to hold on to this real estate in your family. Yes. Don't be so quick to pull the trigger
to sell it below market value so you can just run off and do whatever with the money. If it makes sense to keep it in the family, let's do that if it makes sense. But anyway, let's specifically talk about what's the most advantageous way to get this house from one generation to the next. There's a couple of ways to do it. Mm-hmm. Some of those won't quite make sense. But I want to hit that first one that I threw out there, TOD. Can you do a transfer on death? That is recognized in some states.
Okay.
It is. But it's probably not the one that I would advise because, as a matter of fact, I think Tennessee may have just started recognizing transfer on death on real estate, from my understanding. However, it comes with its own issues because it does not avoid creditors. Anyway, it's just not the best way to do it.
Okay.
All right? So there are other ways that you can do that. It's not available in all states, and it actually can conflict with what's in the will, too. All right, so
that's true.
Yeah, you don't necessarily want to do that. But most recently, you got something about to add right there?
No, go ahead.
Okay, most recently, a friend of mine asked me, just this week actually, would it make sense if I just added my name to the deed?
That's one way. That may not be the best way, but that is one way. Some of the cons against that is that now the parents has lost control of the property. They don't have sole control anymore. That's so right. If they want to do something with the property, sell it, refinance it, they would have to have the permission of both people on the deed.
Correct.
Another one is that it exposes that property to the child's creditors.
Right.
Divorce, lawsuit, because now that child owns half of the home.
Exactly.
And one of the things that you lose when you do that, you guys may have heard of step-up basis.
Okay.
And I'm going to give a quick example. So when you have a home and you sell the home, the difference between what you bought it for and what you sold it for is what you have to pay capital gains tax on. Mm-hmm. So if Big Mama bought the house for $50,000, you're added to the deed and you sell it for $200,000. Now you're paying taxes on $150,000.
Okay.
However, had it transferred upon Big Mama's death, you have a step-up basis. So the new basis or the new value is what it was the day Big Mama died.
And the basis, to make it a little more simple, like the starting point.
The starting point.
Right, for tax purposes.
So now, instead of, say that value was $175,000, now you're paying taxes on $25,000 if you sell it instead of $150,000.
Right.
So you want that new value if this house has been in the family for a long time. You don't want to base it on what she paid for it in 1950.
Right.
Let's base it on what it's worth now.
But if you add your name to that deed,
you lose that.
You lose all of that.
Yeah.
But if you leave it, but if it's left to a trust, then you'll get that step up in basis.
Right.
So again, here comes that trust back into the window, guys. It makes a whole lot of sense to do that. You know, there's also another thing you could do called a life estate that allows a person to live in a home, but it passes automatically to their heirs. So it's a couple of ways that if there's a home in the family and you want to be sure you get it from one generation to the next, there's a couple of ways to do that. Out of everything that I know, and someone may can tell me differently, the best thing I know is to use that trust. Get with an attorney to know what they're doing. They're going to set up the right type of trust, and it seems to me like that's the cleanest way to pass all the creditors, to get around probate, to do all that, to get that house from this generation down to that generation.
Yes, I
Makes
agree.
Makes sense to me. Guys, we got to go back again for another break. Stay with us. When we get back, this time we're going to be talking about Medicare, Medicaid, the difference between the two, and protecting the family legacy. Stay with us, y'all. It's time to elevate.
Real estate investors, the year is almost over, but your tax strategy shouldn't be. At P3 Financial Group, we specialize in helping investors make smart moves before December 31st. From maximizing depreciation and write-offs to structuring your entities the right way, we'll help you keep more of what you earn. Don't just file taxes, plan them. Call P3 Financial Group today or visit p3financialgroup.com to schedule your year-end strategy session.
Listening to the Elevate from Burnout to Bliss podcast with Reggie and Ebony. And today we are talking about estate planning, the talk that changes everything. So this next segment, we're going to talk about Medicaid, Medicare, and protecting the family legacy.
All right.
So let me ask you a question, Reggie. What's the difference between Medicare and Medicaid when it comes to long-term care?
Well, people are often confuse the two. There's a lot of confusion out there between the two. So many people think that Medicare pays for this and Medicaid. Most people tend to know more about Medicare than Medicaid, is what I find. But even with that, it's still a lot wrong. Medicare, not K, Medicare is health insurance for people 65 or older, okay?
Okay.
It covers hospital and doctor visits. Medicare does not cover nursing home care, all right?
I bet most people don't know that.
I know. Most people think it does. Now, it'll cover like short-term skilled nursing care, but not long-term nursing home care. Medicare does not pay for that. All right? Okay. It does not. Medicaid, on the other hand, is often for people with limited assets and income, and it does pay for long-term care if you qualify. We're going to talk about what it takes to qualify for it. So when you think about long-term care, you're thinking about, end-of-the-life living. Don't think Medicare as far as that goes. Think Medicaid. Okay. And we actually can give you an alternative to that. One thing to know about Medicaid, too, Medicare is age-based. Medicaid is not. It doesn't matter what age you are. It's about income and assets.
Okay, so Medicare is 65 and up, but Medicaid does not care about the age, but it's based on assets.
Right, and income. And quite frankly, it's for poor people, okay? That's what Medicaid is for. All right, so Medicare, you about to say something else? Okay, Medicare doesn't pay for things, again, it doesn't pay for the long-term custodial care. Any things like you may hear people talk about activity, daily living, and bathing, dressing, stuff like that. Medicare has nothing to do with that. But I shouldn't say nothing because it can.
I was thinking back to when my mom had her procedure in the hospital, and they said that she could get home health within a certain window after the procedure. So that makes sense. And
that was covered under Medicare, not Medicaid.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So Medicaid. Again, Medicare is the health insurance. Medicaid is the main program that pays for nursing care for people who run out of savings. All right. Again, you got to qualify for it. And to qualify, typically, what it means is there's a certain threshold of assets that you can't have over. And that number varies from state to state. Okay. Right? Tennessee is $2,000.
Yeah, is that...
Well, for individuals. I think married may be $3,000.
I've heard people talk about spending down. So does that have something to do with that?
Absolutely it does. Yeah, so if a person got too many assets, they do what they call spending down the assets to get them under their threshold until they meet the limits. But you think about it, you mean you really have to make yourself poor in order to qualify for Medicaid. And you can't just basically start transferring stuff out to people, other folks. They got what's called a 5-year look back just to see, if you're just doing it just to get rid of just to qualify.
So what all is included? Does that include everything that you own?
No, it's not everything. Like your primary residence up to a certain value, one vehicle, it's certain thing, but things that can be easily converted into cash. Now you got to get rid of that. You got to spend that down. Bank accounts, investments. They even looking at the cash value of whole life insurance policies. Wow. Yeah. So again, this program is for people who do not have. Right? It's for indigent. All right. So, and the problem with that is, well, I shouldn't say the problem, but just let me say the issue that come along with that is that when you think about this time period of your life, a loved one's life, obviously you want it to be as comfortable as possible. Right. You want them to get the best care that they can possibly receive. Right. But here's the thing: best care costs. Okay. Medicaid facilities are very notorious for being perceived as lower quality due to underfunding, which can lead to staffing shortages, limited resources, and they usually have lower ratings compared to the private facilities. And most of us have visited facilities, and you can tell right off the bat if it's a public or a private facility. So what you want to do, again, we're talking about estate planning today. What you want to do is plan for this part of your life and do your best to have assets, insurance, or something in place that can pay for the private care. You don't want to put yourself you shouldn't, if at all possible, let's not plan to make ourselves poor enough to qualify for Medicaid. Right. Does that make sense? Right. Okay.
It'd be better to plan on how you can afford a better facility.
Correct. Now, and I've seen studies. I've been in this business long enough to see it myself, where people may have planned for, to have a really good private care facility, but maybe they didn't have enough. Mm-hmm. But it's still, in my opinion, better than just throwing in the towel saying my plan is going to be broke enough to where I can go into one of these public facilities.
Right.
And I wish the case were that every facility was nice, it smelled good, it had the best staff, the best food, the best care. But unfortunately, this jacked up health system that we have, that's just not the case. And until it is the case, you have to take it upon yourself to do the proper planning that it takes to make sure you and your loved ones can spend those days in the best facilities possible.
And not taken away from the facilities or the people that work at those facilities.
Not at all. Please, thank you for saying that.
There are people that are needed in those facilities.
Yes.
And sometimes people need a place to go. And that's where they get care.
Right.
But just like you can choose the type of car you want to drive or the type of house you want to live in, put yourself in a position where you can choose what facility you want to go into if you need a facility, or you can get home health. I mean, there are so many options, but just be proactive instead of reactive in determining if you need care, how do I want that? What do I want that care to look like?
And I'm so glad you said that because, again, like I mentioned, a lot of these facilities, they're just underfunded. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the government, and then you're talking about states who have not expanded their Medicaid program for whatever reasons those are. And, again, it affects a whole lot. Y'all heard me talk about it last week. I don't really do politics on this podcast, but politics affects, our everyday life. You really can't escape it. But what I'm trying to encourage you to do is plan to live out your life. If you have to go to any facility, let's try to make it a private one. Because I'm going to tell you, man, some of these places, they are like resorts, man. Mm-hmm. They are resorts. And they got these type of places these days that, you can start off in just independent living.
Right.
And you may need unskilled nurse. Then you may need skilled nursing care. You may need, it can go with you the whole way, all the way through. And I mean, these places are like visiting a resort somewhere in the Caribbean, man. So
some of them have all of your meals included.
Yeah, all your meals, all these activities. But again, this stuff costs. It costs money, And but again, with the proper planning, the right insurance policies, assets, whatever the case may be, you can make this part of your life, as well as can be, well as can be. But just know right now. Here's the thing. Here's the takeaway. Just know that Medicare does not pay for long-term care. That's Medicaid, okay? And for Medicaid, it's going to pay for the public facilities, which at all possible you want to plan for, not to be in those, but to be in the private facilities.
So I do have a question.
Sure.
We kind of hung our hat on that part a little bit, but let's go back to the transfer of assets for Medicaid purposes. Like, what happens? I know there's a 5-year look back, but what actually happens if someone transfers property within those 5 years?
Well, what does happen is Medicaid can penalize the transfer, which could delay coverage. That's why the timing is so critical to have these conversations, and you should start years before a crisis even happens. You know what I'm saying? Because you can't just give things away. Like we talked, that 5-year look back, but you can use, again, get with the right attorney. You can use what's called a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, and it'll shield certain assets while still qualifying later.
So you may not have to spend down everything if you use that?
Exactly. But again, get with an estate attorney. They know what they're talking about, and they'll guide you through that part of the process. And really, this should be done under the guidance of your estate attorney along with your financial advisor if that person's not one and the same.
Got it. Okay.
Because the advisor is going to have a better handle on your insurances, your assets. The estate attorney is going to know, the intricacies of these particular trusts, the Medicaid rules and all that stuff. So when y'all get together in the room, y'all should be able to map out something that'll be really good and worthwhile.
So what are some options that people have? So if we know Medicare does not pay for long-term care, we know Medicaid, you have to basically make yourself broke in order to qualify. Someone paying out of pocket that can be really expensive if they didn't properly plan. So what are some other ways that people can plan for long-term care?
Well, the easiest way to do it is some sort of insurance policy that takes that risk and takes it off the individual, transfers it to the company. Now, you have standalone long-term care policies.
Okay.
Those do exist. I'm not a huge fan of those for a few reasons. Because, one, they're use it or lose it type policies. Mm-hmm. So if you never need it, you don't get anything. You and your family don't get those premiums back. Doesn't build any cash into that sort of thing. But they tend to be pretty expensive. Mm-hmm. They really do. But they do work. So if you got one, if it's a good one, keep it because they do work. All right. Now, there are other ways to do it. These days, they have life insurance policies that have long-term care type benefits built into it, typically at no cost if you found the right company.
Okay.
So what I call them 3-in-1s. These type policies, they'll build cash for that you can just use. Mm-hmm. 2, they have the death benefit, when you pass. But 3, they have this long-term care feature that if you should need it, you can use the insurance part, what would have been the death benefit, to keep you in a really nice facility while you're here. So
okay.
I love those. And there's some companies now doing some real cool stuff with wealth transfer where we just take assets, liquidate them, drop them in there, one-time explosion of cash that allows for these long-term care benefits, death benefits. I mean, some really, really cool stuff.
Okay. Do that again, but in layman's terms.
So today there are policies that we use where we can take lump sums of cash that may come from selling another asset, or it may be in a CD, or it may be wherever it may be. We can put them in these particular types of policies. Mm-hmm. Just one funding amount. There's no ongoing premiums.
So you don't pay monthly. You just
don't pay anything
money
monthly.
In there one time.
You just do a one-time deposit. That one-time deposit is going to create a cash accumulation account. Mm-hmm. It creates a death benefit for when you pass, and it creates a pool of money for long-term and critical care.
Got it. Okay.
It does all 3. So, for instance, let's say, for instance, a person got $100,000 sitting in the CD, mm-hmm. and it's just sitting there, mm-hmm. right? And maybe the plan is to leave it to a loved one. Well, we can take that $100,000, put it in this product I'm talking about now. It's going to still grow, actually better than it did in the CD, but it also creates an insurance pot. So now instead of just leaving that initial $100,000. You're going to leave the death benefit mm-hmm. to the beneficiary, which
is more than $100,000,
which passes probate, mm-hmm. right? But in the event you need some of that in the form of long-term care, there's another long-term care pot that you can pull from. And again, this don't require any ongoing monthly premiums.
Wow, it's
been working extremely well. So, if that's something you're interested in, reach out to me. I'd be glad to talk with you more about it. But anyway, just know, guys, that what we're trying to get across today, everybody needs some estate planning. Everybody needs estate planning. But particularly in this segment, we want you to know the differences between Medicare and Medicaid because we know people often confuse that.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. So before we get out of here, let's talk legacy.
Okay.
Because the whole purpose is leaving something mm-hmm. for someone that we love. Mm-hmm. So what is the best way to do that, or some ways that we can leave a legacy?
Well, you got to start with a comprehensive plan. That's going to include everything from your wills, your trust, your power of attorneys, health care. Then you want to revisit your titles to all your property beneficiaries. Mm-hmm. But the main thing, we talk about legacy. I want to get past some of the X's and O's. Because legacy planning is actually a step higher than just estate plan. Estate planning is just the X's, the O's, and all that stuff. But the legacy is what values, what impact are you leaving this world after you're gone? Mm. How will people ever know you came this way? You know what I'm mm-hmm. saying? 3-4 generations from now, does your family know your name? Mm. You don't have to be famous to everybody. But is it anybody that know, man, that was my great-great-great-granddaddy that did that, or my great-great-grandmother, she did this, she left me that. Mm-hmm. May not be money. May not, could be, hope it is, mm-hmm. right? But it could be she had a legacy of education. She was a PhD, so whatever it is you leaving behind, that's your legacy. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, crazy part is we all leave one. It's just some is a bad legacy.
Right.
So what we're talking about today in this part right now is how do you leave a good legacy? Mm-hmm. So, Ed, we really got to start transitioning this thing on down, man.
Yeah, that went quick.
Another good episode. So, Ed, for you and listeners, what do you think the biggest takeaway for today's episode is?
For me, I believe it's communication and coordination. Like, you have to talk to your family. Everyone has to be on the same page as far as what your wishes are. And then you put those on paper. Families that talk early can protect themselves, their care, how they want to be cared for when they're older, and their cash. And you gotta have the talk that makes sure that nobody's left scrambling trying to figure out how to care for you, how to care for other people, what you wanted. Let's just get it all.
Talk. Just have the talk.
Yes, let's get it all out there ahead of time, and you can make sure that your wishes are honored and your parents' wishes are honored if you're planning for them.
Absolutely. So estate planning, y'all, here's my closing thoughts today. Estate planning isn't just about money. It's about meaning. It's your chance to make sure life is going to be easier for the people you love. You know, your estate planning, like I say about life insurance, it's your last love letter to your family. Make it a good one. Guys, we got to get out of here today. Let's give them our sign. Let's give them our handle so they'll know where to catch up with us at.
Okay, on YouTube, you can catch us at Elevate Now Podcast. You can catch me on social media at Eb the Advisor. Slipped my mind for a second. Eb, EBTHEADVISOR. And you can always reach us at the office at 901-209-4015. And you can catch Reggie on social media at The Money Jedi.
All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Remember, y'all, it's time to elevate.